की जय।
Yeah.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hare
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Krishna.
The assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All
Hare
glories.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna Prabhu. The Lord pronounce all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay, good morning. Thank you all for joining. We continue our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in the third canto, 12th chapter. Today's verse is number 4. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Sanakam cha sanandam cha sanatanam atatmabhu sanat kumaram cha munin niskriyan urdva retasaha sanakam cha sanandam cha sanatanam atatmabhu sanat kumaram cha munin niskriyan urdva retasaha Sanakam cha sanandam cha sanatanam atatmabhu sanat kumaram cha munim niskriyan urdva retasaha. Please chant.
Sanakam cha sanadam cha. Sanakam cha sanandam cha. Sanatam atatmabhuः sanatkumaram cha munim nishkriya udhvaretasa. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sanakam cha sanandam cha sanatanam athatmabhuः sanatkumaram cha munin nishkriyan udva retasaha. Hare Krishna.
Sanakam cha sanandanam cha sanatanam athatmabhu sanat kumaram cha munim niskriyan udvaretasa.
सनकं च सनन्दं च सनातनम् अतात्मभूः सनत्कुमारं च मुनीन् निष्क्रियान् ऊर्ध्वरेतसा
Sanakam cha sanandam cha sanandanam athatmabhuः sanatkumaram cha Nishpriyam Udha Rishikashaha. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Okay. Sanakam, Sanaka. Cha, also. Sanandam, Sananda. Cha, and. Sanatanam, Sanatana. Ata, thereafter. Atmabhuhu, Brahma, who is self-born. Sanat Kumaram, Sanat Kumar. Cha, also. Munin, the great sages. Nishkriyan, free from all fruitive action. Ordva Retasaha, those whose semen flows upwards. Translation. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semen's flowing upwards. Purport. Pardon me. Although Brahma created the principles of nescience as a matter of necessity for those living entities who were destined to ignorance by the will of the Lord, he was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. He therefore created 4 principles of knowledge: Sankhya, or empirical philosophy, for the analytical study of material conditions; Yoga, or mysticism, for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage; Vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding; and tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Brahma created the 4 great sages, Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat, to entrust them with these 4 principles of spiritual advancement. And they inaugurated their own spiritual party or sampradaya, known as the Kumara Sampradaya, or later on known as the Nimbarka Sampradaya, for the advancement of bhakti. All of these great sages became great devotees, for without devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value. Translation again. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumar. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semens flowing upwards. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitanamane Namaste Sarasvate Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyabari Pashtati Deshatane Om Ajnana Timirantasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. So we've heard many times from Srila Prabhupada, and I bring this up a lot also, that the process of Krishna consciousness is engaging our natural tendencies in Krishna's service. So the Kumaras here, at least initially, they seem to be the original example of an authority trying to engage someone in doing the needful when it is against their nature. This seems to be the first occurrence of this, right? Lord Brahma's service, which was revealed to him by Lord Vishnu himself after he performed the tapa, was to expand the material realm and populate it, right? So it's natural that he would like his sons to help him out by creating more progeny. But the Chatu Sanas, the 4 Sanas, 4 Kumaras, they weren't interested in that sort of thing. All right, they were curious by nature, and they didn't want to waste their time with these grosser material pursuits. Right, they wanted to use their brains, the subtle material pursuits, to seek out transcendence, right? To find something higher. And of course, we know that they were Brahmavadi impersonalists before they caught a whiff of the aroma of the tulsi leaves from Lord Vishnu's feet. So their nature at that point was to engage their minds to try to understand the truth, right? That was their nature. So their proper engagement was then to exemplify and teach these 4 principles of knowledge, which are mentioned in the purport: Sankhya, Yoga, Tapas, and Vairagya, or empirical analytical philosophy, the mystic process to attain liberation, complete detachment from the material world, and voluntary acceptance of austerities with the aim to achieve spiritual perfection. Right. So this was their proper engagement. And of course, they eventually were properly engaged. But at this point, Brahma, he's very focused on um, getting his service done, right? He finally now knows what exactly to do, and he starts doing it. And so, he's creating these sons, and he's asking them, "Hey, can you help me out?" He's giving them service, right? And of course, in the upcoming days, we're going to talk more about this, and we'll see that Brahma again tried to engage another of his sons against their particular nature. Um, and we tend to do that, actually, right? We tend to do that when something needs to be done. And of course, these days, it always seems like there's some sort of emergency situation where we just need to surrender and do the needful, right? This is what it always seems like here. And sometimes it actually is necessary to do the needful, right? In Krishna's service, to just surrender and do something that we know needs to be done for Krishna's pleasure or should be done. But what we don't seem to realize is that most of the time, right? Emergency situation, okay. But that should mean rare. It shouldn't always be emergency situation. What we need to realize is that most of the time we need to act according to our own natural tendencies in order to purify ourselves, to become better servants of Krishna, right? So that's the goal. So sure, since we already understand that we need to serve Krishna, sure, sometimes we will have to, or we will be inclined to, or sometimes expected to, whatever the case may be, act outside of our nature just to get the service done sometimes. But for the most part, in order to actually purify our consciousness, to purify all of the different material coverings that we have, we need to engage those tendencies in Krishna's service so that they can become purified, right? So that's it, we could see it like this. Say when we're doing laundry, we have a lot of dirty clothes, right? Um, so if instead of putting our dirty clothes in the laundry to get them clean, we just put someone else's laundry, and that'll purify theirs, but it's not actually helping us. We're not getting clean clothes out of it. You know. So, and that's not a perfect example, of course, but it's just an idea of how um, we need to focus on what we have and purify it, right? Because right now we're in the material world. Our goal as aspiring Vaishnavas is to return to Krishna in a favorable uh, capacity, whether that means we stay here in the material world and we can serve him favorably here, or we go to the spirit. It shouldn't really matter to us. Um, and the way we get from where we are to where we want to be is to gradually start seeing how all of the things around us are nothing but Krishna's energy, right? So there's not a problem with what we're surrounded with. There's a problem with how we view the things that we are surrounded by, right? Our consciousness, right? How we're viewing these things. Are we seeing these things as things that can serve me, my purposes, or are we seeing everything as uh, instruments of Krishna's service and how we can use those properly and favorably to actually please Krishna, right? And then so there's always a mix there, and it's a very unique mix for each of us. And that's why we need to stick to our own natures and engage that so that we can purify all of these uh, different layers of material covering, right? So most of the time we need to act according to our natural tendencies. That way we can actually purify ourselves and become better servants of Krishna, right? So Krishna, first of all, he's self-sufficient. He doesn't need a thing from us, right? He has everything. He is everything. It's nice that we sometimes feel inspired or even obliged to do certain things for his pleasure. But if it's outside of our specific nature, the dynamics of the purificatory process are going to be incomplete, right? Sure, we're going to be things that we're going to be doing things that technically are Krishna service. Say we go into the temple and we see that there's a mess, right? And so we want to clean it up, right? It may not be our nature, but it's something that we see that needs to be done, so we do it. So technically that's Krishna's service, right? It's Krishna's temple. We know he likes things clean, so we're cleaning it. But if the nature's not there and the consciousness is not there, it's not actually purifying anything. It's doing something because now the temple's cleaner. Um, uh, but when we're talking about the process of bhakti, uh, we can't judge the results by the material. Well, we can't judge well, I don't want to use the same word twice, but I guess I'm going to, by the material results. We can't judge the effect by the material results, right? In Bhagavad Gita, 1847, it says that it's better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that we have to act within our nature, right? And if we're doing that, if we're acting within our nature, but under the guidance of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then we're actually purifying that nature. So there's no sinful reactions, right? But if we're engaging in someone else's nature, not only are there potential sinful reactions, but we're also not purifying our own mess, right? We're not helping ourselves. We're not really helping others, right? So not only is it potentially sinful to perform these duties outside of our nature, but again, it's not contributing to our sole purpose here. Our sole purpose here is to purify our covered consciousness and return to our eternal state of Krishna's loving servant. So when we engage our natures properly, again, under the expert and authorized guidance of the spiritual master, as outlined by the Shastra and is exemplified by the sadhus, then the very things that are binding us to this material world become the instruments of our liberation from that bondage, right? Because now we're actually seeing things as they are. We're distinguishing reality from illusion, and we're acting accordingly. We see that, oh, this thing isn't here to serve me and my senses. This thing is here to serve Krishna. And this is the way that it can most favorably be used to serve Krishna, right? Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra help us understand that. So our process, and we've heard this many times, is redirecting our consciousness from self-centric, I'm the center, right, to God-centric, Krishna is the center. And that means that we have to start with the things that we are most self-centric about and start figuring out from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra how we can do those things in a God-centric way, right? Because that's what's holding us back. The things that we just aren't seeing, the aspects of our life where we're not seeing Krishna, those are the things that are holding us to this material world. And so if we're able to, by the help of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, see how those very things can be used favorably in Krishna's service, right? Then not only are we eliminating the thing that's holding us back, but we're also actively pursuing the thing that we actually want to achieve, right? And so this is our process, right? So in the context of today's verse, Lord Brahma, he knew that he needed to populate the material world, right? But it was against the nature of these four sons. And of course, it's going to be against the nature of the next one, as we will soon be reminded. So this is also a good reminder for us that we should perform our duties with detachment, right? So Brahma, he had this service. It was given to him by the Supreme Lord, right? There's no There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This is what he was meant to do. And it was clear, right? It's authorized. And so that's his service. So when he did that, when he's doing his service, and he's asking others to help him in that service, we'll see in the next couple days that he'll actually get frustrated with the Kumaras. But I created you. I'm doing my service. Please also, do your service. But he didn't quite have at that particular time. Of course, he worked it out, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out in the purport. He worked it out and then engaged them accordingly. But at first, he was upset that they're not actually doing what he asked, and so his mental state became perturbed. He became actually a little angry, and then so the next son he produced, um, if we don't have the proper mood, the proper detachment, then we still think that we're the doer. Like, in other words, we know that this is an authorized thing, but if we're still trying to control the situation instead of being detached from it, then it's not the perfection of that service, right? So we have a couple more Bhagavad Gita verses, second chapter, verse 47 and 48, where Krishna is saying, you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So this is the trick, right? We have to engage in our prescribed duties without being attached to the results. And we also can't be attached to not doing our duty. In other words, we can't just say, all right, well, if the result doesn't really depend on me, then why should I do anything in the first place? If Krishna's going to do everything anyway, just let him do it. I'll just sit back here and relax, right? This is our tendency. So Krishna's squashing that mentality right here. He's saying, no, you do that prescribed duty. You're not entitled to the fruits, though, because you're not actually the doer, right? But even though you're not the doer, the ultimate doer, you still have to do, right? You still have to perform, right? So you can't be attached to success or failure. And that equanimity is called yoga. And yoga, of course, means the linking process. It means that you understand who you are, you understand who Krishna is, and you understand that relationship, and you're trying to act accordingly to link your consciousness to that supreme consciousness. Right. That is called yoga. So, that being said, when we're engaging in the service of the Lord, sometimes, and I say sometimes, but really it's most of the time, things don't go the way we expect them to go or the way we'd like them to go, right? Whether we're dealing with other people or not, sometimes, most of the time, things don't go the way we would like them to go, right? But the results aren't up to us. So we need to learn to be detached. Easier said than done. But if we're diligent, if we continue to take shelter of our guru and consult with the Shastra and take inspiration from the sadhus, then gradually or even rapidly, it depends on how much sincerity and dedication we put forward in it, then things can become clearer. So we need to learn to be detached, as advised by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Now, of course, this is where it gets a little tricky, because we're meant to do our very best when serving Krishna, right? Collect the best items, the best ingredients, surround ourselves with the best team of people that can help, whichever things I know I'm not expert at, but are required for this particular service. I find someone who is expert at that. So we come up with the best plan, right? And we're meant to do our absolute best. But at the same time, we're not meant to be attached to the results, which is it's counterintuitive. Here in the material world, we judge success by the result, right? If the result isn't good, then we think that's a failure, right? So this is what we're accustomed to doing. So we're attached to the results. So we have to try our best for a favorable result for Krishna, but we shouldn't be attached when we try our best and it doesn't work out the way we wanted to, because for Krishna, it's the consciousness that's the important thing, not the material result, right? Material results can be distracting, actually. So oftentimes, Krishna shows us special mercy by taking those distractions away, right? Taking away these successes, because sometimes if something is successful, we become attached. We become distracted and we become attached to thinking, oh, I did that. I put forth this effort and this is the result and I did that, right? And so sometimes because we have this tendency, uh, Krishna will just take that positive material result away because the material result is not the important thing. It's the relationship, the spiritual relationship, right? So when something doesn't go the way that we hoped, we can use that as inspiration to try to improve our offerings, but we shouldn't become discouraged, right? So it's not that we shouldn't. So there's a difference between being detached and just not caring, right? So we are to care that our service is favorable and pleasing Krishna, but we shouldn't gauge it on the material result. And we can use this lack of ourselves, but we shouldn't become discouraged, right? Because again, we have to know factually that Krishna's pleasure, it's actually coming from the relationship, not from the material result, right? And then also, we have to keep in mind that we can't actually control the material results no matter how hard we try. We do try very hard all the time to control these material results, but we can't. It's not within our control, right? So what we can do is focus on the things that we do have some control over, right? And that's our motives. We have control over what our motives are. And we have to ask ourselves constantly, we have to assess, are we truly trying to please Krishna with these activities or words or thoughts? Or are we trying to control the situation and rely on our illusory material prowess, whether gross or subtle, right? Physical or mental? Are we truly acting as an instrument, or are we trying to be the conductor, right? This is how we can understand what our true motive is, right? When the result doesn't go our way, are we upset because we were hoping to please Krishna, or we were hoping that it would just, work out a certain way for other reasons? Uh, because if we truly knew that Krishna's pleasure didn't depend on the material results, then we wouldn't be worried that, oh no, Krishna can't be pleased because the result wasn't favorable. The result is the result that Krishna put forth. Not a blade of grass moves without his will. So we don't have control over that, but what we do have control over is our motive, our consciousness, right? And the way that we redirect our consciousness from this polluted state to its purified state is through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. They will help us successfully redirect our conductor mentality and bring it to the instrumental mentality. Right? The last thing to note here is that when we are physically and even or mentally engaged in what we consider to be devotional service or the path to transcendence, if our motive and consciousness are not in line with bhakti, there will be no true success, right? So the last sentence of today's purport, I'm just going to read that again. It said, all of these great sages, referring to the four Kumaras, became great devotees. For without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value, right? So it mentioned before that they were naturally inclined to austerity, um, analytical study, detachment, and the process of mystic perfection. But they were doing so in an impersonal way. And it wasn't until they gained the association of Krishna and understood him as a person that they became these great devotees. Because without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value, right? So the Kumaras, they're engaging in these austerities, detachment, empirical philosophy, in the process of mystic perfection, but they were impersonalists. So although the actions we choose to engage in can be more favorable or less favorable to devotional service, if we're not actually redirecting our consciousness from self-centric to God-centric, well, we will not achieve success, right? So you can be engaging either mentally or physically in something that in theory we think it to be devotional service, but if the mentality isn't there, the motive and the proper motive and consciousness isn't there, then it won't be successful. And we're not talking material success here, we're talking actual success, and this is the only success that is important. So that we have to pay special attention to this, to where our motive is always. One final thing that I want to mention here is that sometimes it may seem like I'm pointing out the flaws of great souls, like Indra or Brahma or the Kumaras, etc. Because sometimes we do this. In the Bhagavatam, these great souls, they're so kind to us that they will show us through their example that no matter what level you are on, if you lose sight, even momentarily, from the actual point of bhakti, there are consequences, right? So these beings, they're actually highly elevated souls, and they have to be put in these very important positions. In fact, if there are not jivas who are qualified to take these positions, then Lord Vishnu himself takes that position, right? It's that important. So uh, I want to make it as clear as possible that when we're pointing out what seem to be flaws of these great souls, we're just showing the potential uh, dangers of losing sight uh, of what is the most important, which is one's consciousness, right? Where we're directing the consciousness. So we do have to point out, though, that they're highly elevated souls, but they are in the material world, which means that there has to be some tendency, either subtle or gross, to control or enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord, right? That's just the standard for here. In the material world is a place where, the jivas misused their free will. They decided to try their hand at being the center. And so that's why we're all here in the material world, whether we're an ant or we're a demigod. So there is some tendency to be the controller or enjoyer, right? And that's the point, is that uh, we have to understand that no matter how much knowledge we acquire uh, or how much physical activity that we think we're engaging in Krishna service, if that consciousness isn't redirected to actually to Krishna, that we're not trying, if we're not actually trying to please Krishna with our every thought, word, and action, we're still trying to enjoy or control separately from him, right? And that is the pitfall, right? So these great souls, they only have, we should always understand that every thought, word, and action that we have should be in line with an action that we have should be in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And when they're not, we have to figure out a way to bring them in line. So when it seems like I might be pointing out the flaws of these great souls, what I'm really attempting to do is show that no matter what level we are on in our devotional progress, we always have to be careful and rigidly follow the process, right? And these great souls, for our benefit, show us what will happen if we lose sight of that even for a moment. So we need to just remain diligent and constantly verify from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra that our thoughts, words, and actions are all favorably serving Krishna, and that we are detached from the material results. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions or comments or additions. Would anyone like to add anything?
Anybody has questions, please just raise your hand or unmute yourself and go ahead. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It just seems like Krishna is listening and answering questions at the right time. At least for me, that's how I feel. It was something was on my mind. I approached my Guru Maharaj and he replied back. But your class today clarified what it is he was trying to tell me. I mean, this is what I needed. I needed an expansion of the instruction. And my question, though, is, you were talking about what our nature is and use our nature in serving Krishna. But I feel at least I am so messed up.
Yeah.
When you say nature, my nature, what is that nature that I should be?
Okay. Yeah,
What are those qualities?
Yeah, that's a great question, because sometimes, what we try to tend to do is we try to figure out what our nature is. Like, oh, what am I, a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya? Because we're mixed, like you said, messed up, all of us, Kali Yuga. So it's not that we have to put one of those words on it or a mixture of those words on it to figure out what our nature is. Our nature is what we, without any other outside influence, will automatically do, right? That's our nature. Those are our particular attachments. So for everyone, it's different, right? But when we wake up, the thing that we are automatically attracted to doing, right? That's going to show what our nature is. So if you don't even have to think of it in those terms of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra at this point. First, we just have to determine, okay, no matter what, so for some people, they eat, sleep, dream soccer, right? Or some sport, right? That's all they focus on. So for us, it's something else, right? So we just have to determine that what is the thing that we pick the biggest one, the thing that we're most attached to, and we figure out, okay, how can I properly do this in Krishna's service? So one example that I gave many times, but it was about me a long time ago, is I was a race car driver. I thought that I was engaging it properly in Krishna's service because, anyway, there were various ways that I was connecting it to Krishna's service. But there was still this underlying tendency that I was the doer, right? Because I was actually making the modifications to the car, and I was doing all of these things. I was doing, right? That's where you understand you're making an improper statement, right? Because Krishna is the doer. I was just one small factor of that action, right? Which we know from Bhagavad Gita that there are different factors of action. So there was still, although I was using it in Krishna's service, um, there was still this sense of attachment. It was something that I wanted to do. And so since I wanted to do it, I figured I would do it for Krishna, right? So that's a thing, and that's good. But better than that is to then figure out, okay, I want to do this and I'm doing it for Krishna, but eventually I want to find out what Krishna wants me to do, right? So when I finally was able to successfully use that attachment completely, well, more completely, I should say, because I don't do anything completely in Christian service, unfortunately, yet, but I hope to get there. Bring it in line more with Krishna service. Then I was no longer attached to doing it anymore. So I'm not a race car driver anymore. It used to be something that was very important to me. But then when I was able to successfully engage it enough in Krishna service, and of course, Krishna is very merciful. So even if we're not quite to the point where we need to be, he sees the sincerity and he helps us out. He helps us become detached from the thing. And then, so the point here, though, is at that point when I became detached from being a race car driver, I could have kept driving race car because if you're detached, it's no longer holding you back. But, and that's what most people do, and you can, right? If you can continue to do what you were doing in a detached mood, then that's good. But if Krishna then reveals to you some other activity that's more favorable to his service, then you can just stop doing that and then do something else, right? So our nature just means what we naturally do, what we're naturally inclined to do, right? So we just have to see, all right, what is it that, I don't have to think about, I don't have to try to motivate myself to do it. I'm just going to do it. That's the thing. And there's so many of them, of course, but pick one at first and then just figure out how to engage that particular thing properly and favorably in Krishna's service. And then gradually you do the next, the next, the next, the next, until every thought, word, and action is engaged in Krishna service. Does that help a little?
Yes, it does help. And like I've said before, every time you give the answer, it, makes you think even more, or, our even figuring out what our nature is so difficult because we are so messed up. We have decided what is considered good or high quality or high level, and we think, and so to really, really be able to see what our true nature is also so difficult.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up because generally, so here's another exercise that I used to give to people. So generally, when we're asked a question, there are always different possible answers, right? So if someone asks us an honest question, we can give them the answer of what we wish was the answer. Uh, uh, we can give them the answer that we think they want to hear. We can give them the honest answer of what it really is, but what we, would like it to be. So in the same way, when we're talking about our nature, we know from Shastra what a proper nature would be. We have all these lists of qualities, right? And so we hold them in high regard. We know that they're proper. And so since we're attracted to them, we may think that it's sort of our nature since we value them, right? But the thing about value is if we want to see actually what our values are, and this is an exercise that I've given out before, is so first you make a list of things that you value, right? And so we're going to make these great lists, right? Of all of these, really good qualities and tendencies like that. And so there you have that list, and pop it up on the wall and you're like, okay, these are the things that I value, right? Then you have to make another list. And that's how you spend your time every day. Right? Those are the things that you actually value because those are the things you're spending your time on, right? And our goal, our process of Krishna consciousness is to go from this list to that list, right? And it's a gradual process. And so this list, this one over here, that's our nature. This is what we want to
Mm.
achieve. So we're naturally attracted to it, but we're not naturally doing it. So what we're naturally doing, what we're spending our time, our efforts, for those who have money, resources, whatever, mostly time. Those are our actual values, right? And when we make that list, if we're upset by it, then it's good. That's good common sense, right? That we should be like, oh, I'm actually disappointed in myself that I know that these are the things that I shouldn't be doing, but actually these are the things that I am doing. And so that's a really good way to determine what our nature is, right? You do those lists and okay, I get it. I'm naturally inclined to do these things. Okay, no problem, because no matter what our natural inclinations are, they can be engaged in Krishna service. Don't be discouraged. Figure out how to do these things. Start at the top, the most time-consuming one for us. What are we, what are we, what distracts us the most from this list, from Krishna service? And then figure out how to do that in Krishna service. Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra will help us determine what exactly we need to do and to keep us on track. And of course, uh, you can't give enough emphasis on the chanting, right? Chanting has to be done because not only are we asking Krishna to engage us in his service, but Cheto Darpana Marjana, it's also making things clearer to us so that we can see how to engage properly in Krishna's service, right? So the chanting, the instructions from the guru, uh, the lessons that we learn from the Shastra, and the examples that we can follow from the sadhus, all very important. But we have to be diligent. We can't sit back and relax. This isn't. It's not a game, you know. This is the it is our sole purpose as aspiring Vaishnavas. We have so many things that we think are important in life. And of course, we think Krishna consciousness is important, but oftentimes it gets put on the back burner, unfortunately, right? We think that, okay, that is also very important to me, Krishna consciousness, but right now I have this duty, that duty, the other duty, not knowing that these duties that we're listing can be done in a very Krishna conscious way, right? Um, and we can do that, and we have to put forth the effort and the sincerity. Uh, did that help?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you. These are the questions that are always there, and we have to hear not only the questions but the answers over and over and over again, um, because the mind is so strong and tricky that the mind will make us think that we're actually following that list, right? Even though we're spending so much time on this, the mind, it's tricky. So you're right. When you say our nature, it's kind of messed up and it's mixed and it's muddy and muddled. But if we do these things, if we're honest with ourselves and we actually assess our situation, it won't take long before we realize that there's a lot of work that we can do. And as soon as we start doing that work, Krishna helps. It's good that we're not in control of the result because we would mess it up. Krishna, on the other hand, if we actually rely on him, then he takes over, which is the beautiful thing about it. But that's the only thing that's holding us back is that consciousness. So that's what we work on. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay. Doesn't seem to be. Thank you all again for joining today's class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai
Srila Ram ki jai.
Jai.
Anand Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Chakalpatarapyasya kripasindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for nice answers you gave to Shobharade. So many of them, I need that too.
The idea of list, making
So
list.
those things will help me also a lot. So
Too.
thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.